Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chisholm Report. Start off with the Ed Markey versus Joe Kennedy III primary.
We went out. We did it. With all due respect, it's time to start asking what your country can do for you.
Obviously, Ed Markey did win, much to my disappointment. But does anyone have any starting out thoughts to Joe Kennedy's loss or Ed Markey's win?
I want to start by saying the biggest loser here isn't Joe Kennedy. Well, yes, he's the biggest loser. I think the biggest loser is Nancy Pelosi and the establishment and the corporate part of the Democratic Party. And as a progressive, this really, really excited me. Because now, we can say, oh, you want to be electable? I'll go to the center, all that stuff. And we've been seeing people in, doesn't matter if they're blue, red, purple states or whatever, we've seen people try and say, oh, come to the center, that's the real part. But I think a big thing now is Ed Markey, he didn't have the best record. He voted for the Iraq War, he voted for NAFTA, he voted for TPP. So he wasn't always this bleeding heart progressive. But he won by saying, no, I am the more progressive one. And this honestly seemed like a race of who's more progressive. And I love that, because now instead people are trying to, you see in elections people trying to convince each other, oh, I'm not a scary liberal. But now they're it's sending a message. And I think Politico made a tweet that encompasses this perfectly, that in incumbents in blue states, if they fear a primary challenge, they have to associate with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, support Green New Deal, support Medicare for All, and see them as progressive as possible to make sure that they're not as unseated. And as a progressive, that's really, really exciting. It's, I don't want to compare it to the Tea Party movement because, the Tea Party had a lot of toxicity and stuff, but I'm really excited. So while, yes, Joe Kennedy, who, by the way, is the first Kennedy to lose a race in Massachusetts, it may have lost, the real loser is Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic establishment, especially in deep blue states. So that's my take, and I'm really excited about it.
I definitely want to comment on this. I think that number one, you definitely do not have to align yourself with AOC or any progressive Democrats to be winning as a Democrat, and that's because, progressives have had major upsets that aren't in the media this year. And because obviously the media does tend to, certain media sources on left do tend to have left biases. But I think obviously, there was another progressive upset that exact same night. And I definitely don't think it was that big of a hit to Nancy Pelosi and establishment Democrats. I think that they have been doing very well, and I think that it really doesn't affect Nancy Pelosi or whatever the establishment Democrats want at all. I think that Ed Markey was an incumbent, and incumbents do statistically have better chances, and it was a 10-point difference, which for an incumbent is not great. I think that just the premise that you have to be a progressive Democrat to win across the country and keep your seats is I don't think that's a fair assessment, because we saw it with Solomon for Congress, who was popular on TikTok. He lost his race in Michigan to Debbie Dingell. We see a lot of this. We saw Kimberly, who ran against in the Iowa Democratic Senate primaries, and she lost that race. We've seen a lot of progressive upsets this past election cycle. So I think that's my point. That's how I see it. I just don't think that it's a fair assessment.
Yeah, can I go? Yeah, the case like you're talking about weren't really upset. Oh, sorry, about my phone. They were never really upset. They were all progressive, challenging an incumbent, and the incumbent was all widely expected to win. However, we have seen a lot of upsets. We haven't really seen a lot of, we have barely seen any moderates unseating progressives. We have seen a lot of progressives unseating moderates. And that's the main thing now. And what I'm talking about is not in places like Ohio and Iowa, but in we're talking about in solid blue states or in solid blue districts, like in the Cori Bush upset in St. Louis, again Massachusetts, Jamal Bowman down in New York, and solid blue districts and very progressive districts where people have been coasting on having the financial backing of the Democratic establishment. Now it has been seen as, in those districts, it is the politically logical thing to do, since you are in a progressive district, to associate with progressive policies and progressive politicians and progressive practices. So yeah, obviously, when it comes, it's not, these were not upsets. They were what was widely expected. In Massachusetts, I think Alex Norris and Richard Neal, the incumbent, won that. He was widely expected to win. It's what the polling showed. Maybe it was a bit more largely even expected, but other than that, it was expected he ran a homophobic smear campaign against the primary challenger. These were not upsets, but we have seen a lot of people. It's now in Washington, D.C., people from states like, Massachusetts, in solid blue states like St. Louis, places like New York, not next probably in Rhode Island, Connecticut, all on the East Coast, Vermont, New Hampshire, all of those states we're going to now have it seen as basic logic to associate with progressive, to associate with AOC. Maybe not in Ohio and Iowa, which I somewhat get. And yeah, maybe we shouldn't expect, someone from TikTok with like 10,000 followers to upseat Nancy Pelosi or something like that. That's not conventional wisdom. But if you are in a solid blue district and you're worried about being primary challenged, or if you're in a solid blue state, it's now become conventional wisdom to go to the left. It's like what the Tea Party did. And again, I have my issues with the Tea Party, but that was the basic thing, is a lot of people were primarying moderates or centrists, and people were saying, well, if I don't want to get primaried, I have to do what my constituents want, which is go to the right, or in this case, go to the left. So yeah, that's kind of my point. It's now become very clear that no one, especially in solid blue seats, is safe. And if you want to stay safe, then you have to associate with the left.
But I also think, obviously, if you're in a farther left progressive area, you're going to run as a progressive. I don't think solid blue states at all are the standard for, it's a solid blue state, so now we're going to go progressive. And a perfect perfect example of that is Illinois. Illinois has 2 very moderate Democrat senators and a lot of moderate Congress people. I mean, we have Jan Schakowsky, who is a progressive, but we have a lot of moderate Democrats who are in our Congress. And I think that, obviously, if you're in a progressive area, running as a progressive is the way you want to go. But that doesn't mean that all solid blue places are going to be progressive places. I think that's my point. Izzy, did you have something to say?
I think that the Ed Markey versus Joe Kennedy primary definitely shows what direction the Democratic Party is going in. And I think that it shows that the Democratic Party is moving slowly more progressive, which we're seeing too in Joe Biden. Joe Biden, recently he came out and said basically he supports decriminalizing all drugs, which is something you would never expect from a moderate Democrat like Joe Biden. The Democratic Party is moving more left and left and left as more of the people in the Democratic Party are becoming more left and left, or more progressive.
I would agree. I think that the Democrats are picking up some more progressive wing candidates and Congress people. I think this year is a real test to see if they'll win against the Republicans. So I would agree with you. I would agree with you on that one. What does everybody think that Joe Kennedy will do going forward? Do we think he'll run for something? Do we think he'll run again?
I think that Joe Kennedy is definitely going to try to run for Senate again at some point. I don't think that he's going to try to challenge an incumbent again. I don't think he's going to do that again. But I do think once Elizabeth Warren or Ed Markey retire, he's definitely going to try to get to the Senate again. Like, let's keep in mind, he's very young. I don't know how old he is, but he is in his 30s. So he still does have some
He's
time.
39, yeah.
Yeah, he still does have quite a lot of time to get in the Senate. I personally think he wants to run for president someday.
I think he's going to probably run for his Congress seat again, and that's going to be a very easy. He's gonna easily get it back. I think the person who was elected to his seat is extremely moderate. It was an extremely close race. It's clear if he runs for that Congress seat again, he's gonna get back. He'll probably run for Senate again. I don't know. He's gonna probably try and run for president. I don't see him running for president. People are trying to say that he's the future of the Democratic Party. I don't see that whatsoever. Maybe he'll do somewhat good, but I think that this election proved that name recognition does not get you there. Nepotism does not get you there. It may have gotten, I may have thought it was going to get him there because, again, he was leading 17 points in early polling. But as people learned more about him and how he is not as progressive as they try to say, because, again, he tried to come off as this young, charismatic, and he tried to put himself as this progressive. But people, compared the record and saw that, it was a competition of who was more progressive, and Ed Markey obviously won that. But I see a future for him in politics. Running for president, maybe his name recognition could get him to 5th place in Iowa. I don't know, maybe. But I don't really see if he has anything special to offer. Because even someone like, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke would be better because they have that Obama-esque mentality, demeanor, that come off as, some people think it's sucked up, and some people think it's sincere, and some people think that it's inspiring. I don't think Joe Kennedy just has anything to offer. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I think from the moderate lens, if we're going to put anyone as the future of the Democratic Party, I'd definitely say it'd be someone like Pete Buttigieg and probably Kamala Harris at this point.
There goes the last great American dynasty.